The next stop on our search for understanding global climate is going to be Japan. And we're going to be looking here at a certain data set, trying to understand how the temperature has changed over the last 1,000 years and look for evidence of climate change. How are we going to do that? Well, the answer is in this sign. Of course, you have to read Japanese to understand what the sign is saying, but it's telling us about the Hanami Matsuri, the flower watching festival. And these characters right here mean cherry blossom festival. The rest of the lanterns here are all advertising sponsors, different companies who are paying to have their name up here, just like a big sporting event will have billboards with different companies' names on it and things like that. So this is a big event. It's a big deal. It's got big name sponsors. And what is the event? Well, it's a whole bunch of people coming to watch the flowers. Young people, old people, everybody from all around the country loves going out and watching the cherry blossoms opening. They're watching them as they bloom, and it's a big event because they're all looking for this. Some of the very first blossoms that open. Now, a blossom opening, the oncoming of spring, is like a new beginning. It's the beginning of a new year in so many ways, and so the Japanese people love to come and watch the new beginning. And these cherry blossoms are just waiting for the perfect moment to burst open, and that's going to be what they're going to call the oncoming of the new spring. And when they do burst open, it is absolutely spectacular. It's like the entire sky has exploded with cotton balls or something like that. It's these beautiful blossoms, just white blossoms all around you, being surrounded by them. It's truly spectacular and gorgeous. Or if you don't like white blossoms, maybe you'll like the pink variety, which also shows up a lot around. And it's just absolutely phenomenal to be surrounded by all of these blossoms. Now, this is a very big deal, like I said, in Japan. People will throw huge parties, big picnics, and you can see a picture here showing all the different people that are out picnicking beneath one of the famous cherry blossom groves in Yoyogi Park. And if you take a look down here, you can see that they all set up their little blue tarps, and right on the edge of the little blue tarps, everybody takes off their shoes, because that's what you do in Japan. Shoes are taken off when you go into a home or just about anywhere else, and so it's kind of fun to see. And people have these big parties where they eat, they drink, sometimes they drink a little bit too much. Here's another picture in a different spot, and more of those blue tarps, and you can see in the front here are some college students. Now, the cool thing about Japan is that the school year ends in March, and these kids right now are on spring break from their college. Kind of nice. And they won't have to go back to school and start their new year of school until, April. They get about a week off in between their junior year and their senior year, or their freshman year and their sophomore year. Just a week off, and they start the new school year the same time that the cherry blossoms announce the new season beginning, springtime. Now, behind this group of college students is kind of weird. There's this big tarp here that's got just one guy sitting there in a tie. Now, this really emphasizes how important the Cherry Blossom Festival is for the Japanese people. This guy here, he's a company worker. He's an employee of a company, probably one of the lowest ranking employees. Maybe he just got hired, maybe he just graduated from college just last week, and he's starting his new job already. And he's been out here since before the sun came up, because he had to come set up this blue tarp, and he's sitting there saving it, reserving it. He's going to be there all day long, because this evening his company is going to come and have its company picnic here, and they want to have their company picnic in the best flower watching spot. And so they have devoted one of their employees full day to reserving this spot. That's how important it is to have a good viewing spot for flower watching. And so he's sitting there, and he'll be there for many more hours. Another fun thing to do around the flower watching season is to come here. This is the moat of the Imperial Palace. Now, it's where the emperor lives of Japan. And happily, this moat used to be here to protect people and to protect the emperor from invaders. But you know what? There aren't really any invaders anymore. So now they let you go on the moat. And you can take a little boat ride there, a little rowboat. And if you look closely, you can probably see that all of these people here are pairs, because this is a great place to take a date. In fact, in Japan, they call this a date course. And you can go out there and go with your date and row along among these cascading blossoms of cherry trees, just flowing into the water, basically. And here is my date, my wife, and she's rowing me around. You can see the white building of the Imperial Palace in the background, the castle for the emperor. And here we are rowing around, and you can even see little white dots here, which are all the cherry blossom petals that have fallen down. And they kind of fall like snow. It's a really beautiful thing to do, and you can row along there and get up very close. Now, unfortunately, cherry blossoms, while they're beautiful, they actually don't have very much of a fragrance. They don't smell very much. They're not like roses or anything like that that have a beautiful smell. So even though I'm up here close, I'm just enjoying their beauty. I'm not smelling them while I'm there. And I loved the cherry blossom season. I worked at the University of Tokyo, very close to this is Ueno Park, one of the most famous places for flower watching. And I came here day after day, watching and waiting for the perfect moment here. And this is me early in the flower watching season when the cherry blossoms are just about to open. And there are a few of them that already have, and you can see when they first open, they're very pink in color. But I came back a few days later, and here I am just off a little bit to the side, and the colors of the blossoms, they've changed a little bit. They're a little bit more white. There are also a lot more people because it's getting to be closer to the best watching time. And then I came back just a few days after that for this peak cherry blossom viewing. And you can see how crowded it was. And this is me with Kato sensei, the professor that I worked with at the University of Tokyo, who was my official host. And we came here and we had our own picnic for flower watching on the very day of the peak of the cherry blossoms. And so when you take a look at these pictures here, all in a sequence, you can see the opening of the cherry blossoms. And I recorded the date that I took each one of these pictures, April 3rd, April 6th, and then the peak bloom for 2007 on April 9th. Now, I'm not, of course, the first one to have gone through and watched these cherry blossoms carefully and recorded the peak bloom. In fact, people have been doing this for over 1,000 years, recording the exact date that peak bloom occurred for these cherry blossoms. And from that, we can learn a lot. Now, what causes a cherry blossom to open early or open later or decide when to open? Well, let's ask a cherry blossom. Here's one here that's thinking to itself, when should I open? Well, right now, it's too dark. It's getting brighter. Yay! Spring's more intense sunlight is here. It's almost time to open. What's this cherry blossom waiting for? Well, it's still too cold to open. It's going to wait a little bit longer. Now, of course, if these cherry blossoms open too early and it's still cold and they freeze, well, the petals can fall off. And there's no point in being a cherry blossom if your petals fall off. And so they don't want to open up too early. But if they open up too late, it'll get too hot too quickly and they'll wilt. So they have to wait for just the perfect moment to open at just the perfect temperature. So right now it's too cold, but let's wait a little bit longer, a little bit later in the year. As the season gets closer to spring, the temperature goes up. Ooh, it's warming. Yes, it's the perfect temperature. It's time to burst forth with beauty. And our cherry blossom will open at just the perfect temperature. Now, if it's a warmer year, that means that the cherry blossoms might be able to open up a little bit earlier in the year. But if it's a particularly cold year, they're going to have to stay closed tight for longer, and they won't open until much later in the year. And people have been recording the exact date that each one of these cherry blossoms has opened for many, many centuries. And we're going to be looking at those data right now. So why don't I go ahead and let you guys pass out the handout. So if I can get a volunteer to come up and help pass out this handout, and I'm going to ask somebody to put me on pause and then restart once everybody has a copy of the handout. So let's take a look at the handout that you have and try and look at all the different parts. The first thing you have is a data table, and it shows you different centuries from the year 900 all the way up to the year 1956. And then for each one of those centuries, it tells you the mean blooming date. Now, mean is just another year for average. So this is the average year that the cherry blossoms hit their peak bloom during that century. And so between the years 900 and 999, the peak bloom happened sometime around April 11.3, sometime between April 11th and April 12th. Now, how do you get a decimal year or decimal day there? Well, it has to do with the fact that you're looking at the average. Let's take an example of just 3 years, 900, 901, and 902. Now, in the year 900, the bloom peaked on April 11th. The next year, the 12th, and then on the third year, the 11th again. So to take the average date that the blooms peaked, we would add up all three numbers, 11 plus 12 plus 11, and then divide by the number of years that we're looking at, divided by 3 in this case. And so 34 divided by 3 is 11.3333, a whole lot of 3's. So we've got a decimal number because we've taken an average. And that's where those decimal numbers come from. Now the next part of your handout has this plot. Now let's take a look at the axes on the plot. The x-axis has each one of those centuries, the years. That makes sense. The y-axis also makes sense. It's got different days in April, from the 10th through the 19th, but you'll notice something's a little bit different about it than what we often have for a graph. 10 is up here, and 19 is down there. It's backwards. Now, why would we do that? Well, if the cherry blossoms bloomed early, close to the 10th, they bloom early because it's a warmer year, and so they can open up earlier. Earlier means warmer. That if you've got later, that means that it was probably a cooler year, and the cherry blossoms had to stay shut for longer, and they weren't able to open up until later. And so we like to put warmer up on the top and cooler down on the bottom. We're going to do this because we're going to compare our chart to another type of data set tomorrow. And that's why we've sort of flipped things upside down. So let's go ahead and try and plot some of our data on here. We'll plot them the first data point together, and then I'll let you guys go ahead and plot your own individually for the rest. Now, the first data point is between 900 and 999. That's right here on the x-axis. And we're looking for April 11.3. So we're going to go up to somewhere between April 11th and April 12th. In fact, about a third of the way down. So maybe right about right here, we can draw a line. And I'd like you guys to make a bar graph. So from that line, shade in a bar that goes straight down from there. And then you'll go ahead and you'll do that for all of the other data in your table. And then I'd like you to plot one more data point, one that's not on your table, but it's the one that I collected when I was there in 2007. In 2007, you might remember that the picture I had from April 9th was the peak bloom date. And so April 9th, that's a little bit off your chart, but I'd like you to try and put on the edge of your chart a bar for 2007. So you can see how that compares to the mean bloom date over these last several centuries. And we'll look and see if we find any evidence for global warming. Once you're done with your plotting, you can go ahead and answer the questions down below on this worksheet and then move on to the next exercise, which should be written on the board. If you get stuck, please raise your hand and ask the teacher, or you guys can help each other out and try and make sure that everybody understands how to draw this bar graph. And hopefully you'll get a beautiful picture of how the temperature has changed over the last 1,000 years according to these blooming thermometers. So good luck.